Calumet Editions, an eclectic publisher of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, introduced a new business model nearly a decade ago, in which the publisher and author work as equal partners in a joint venture. Their stable of authors have won numerous and prestigious prizes across literary forms. Where traditional publishers fail to see the value in projects, Calumet cooperates with its authors in realizing a book's potential.
And welcome back. Writer's Corner returns. Alan Miller, who's still above ground. So I'll be running this interview, and we're very lucky to have Mary Seifert. Mary is a writer, also started a little bit later in life in terms of being a novelist, but she's turned out 9 novels in a very short period of time, and she has a 10th on its way to the printer right now.
Yes. Yes.
She's a member of Sisters in Crime and very well known in the area. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I think this is so much fun. I love the writing, I love the books, I love the interview. This is going to be great.
Why not?
Exactly.
Now, you write the Katie and Maverick books, Maverick being a black lab. Dogs go right to my heart. So tell us how you got started in that.
I was walking around a slough in west central Minnesota with my dog, and across the slough, around the corner, was an old car, rusty and dented, and there were weeds growing through the trunk and in through the glass. And I'm walking the dog thinking, I bet there's a body in that trunk. And I thought I could write a story about walking around the slough. So my first story happens around a slough, and it happens with a car that ends up in the water. So it was kind of just happenstance. I got very fortunate. I liked writing. I kept writing beginnings of many stories. That particular year, I went to the baseball game that we have in Wilmer. They have a Stingers team. And I went there with a friend of mine, and she said, "What'd you do today?" And I said, "I wrote a story." And she said, "Can I read it?" And I said, "No." And she asked why. And I said, "Because I didn't finish it." And she said, "Finish it." So I did. And that was the first one.
And from there?
I decided that I liked the characters. I love the Black Lab. He was very similar to my own precious Black Lab, the good things and the bad things that he does. So I wrote a second story, and I wrote a third story. And then I tried to sell the stories, and I tried to get an agent, and I sent out many queries. I could wallpaper a room. I eventually found someone that said, "We really like your story, but can we change?" And then they went through the things that they wanted to change, and they really did know the market. They first of all wanted to change the titles. They were originally Titanic Cocktail, Titanic Tea, and Titanic Trial. And they said, when you put Titanic in the title, people automatically go to 1912. So we changed the titles. They said that I had a lot of character names that had the same sound. There were lots of C's and K's. And then they also said, we'd like to cut it down by 15,000 words because it's really a cozy mystery. It's not just a mystery. So we have Katie and Maverick Cozy Mysteries.
And how many words on an average?
72,500.
Anything over 50,000 is considered a novel.
Yes.
So.
Yes. But at 85,000, it's a little bit much for a cozy mystery, which is what I think. I think it was originally 87,000 words. So they were right. It was a cozy mystery. I do have an amateur sleuth. I do have less colorful language. The violence happens off the page. You know, it is a cozy mystery. So they were right.
But they are mysteries. They are.
Yes.
Murder mysteries.
They are.
And the amazing thing is you have turned out now what will be 10 of them in a reasonably short period of time.
I'm long-winded.
I will spend 6 to 9 months on 90 90,000 words or 86,000 words. And it's a chore. But for people, and we get a lot of queries, for people who want to write, what would you say to them for inspiration and to build their confidence?
I think you take your story, whatever it is, and you put it down. You put it on paper. If somebody else reads it, that's great. If you publish it, that's great. If it's just a story for yourself, that works. My dad was notorious for writing stories about his fishing trips with his friends. And when they would read the stories, they didn't even recognize themselves in the stories. He liked telling stories. And I think that makes it fun for the people that are reading the stories, and it makes it fun for the person that's actually telling the story. So if you have something that you want to, if you have a story, you need to get it out there, whether it's written or even spoken, recorded.
You have to have the confidence in yourself to do it. But there's also an editing process. Tell us what you went through with your editor when you submitted the first book. And we'll talk about getting an agent, which is a very difficult task.
Yes. I think the editing, the publisher that I have, Columbine Publishing Group, had a wonderful rapport with their authors, and they wrote and they called and they said, this is what we'd like from you. Do it as well as you can, and then you're going to send it to us, and we're going to go back through, and it's going to have a couple editors go through it, and we'll send it back. And so I was learning the process of using Word and all of those wonderful things that are in Word, like the review, and that it can actually read your book to you. I didn't know it did that. I used Word forever, and I never knew it did all those things. I never read the top, and I learned a little bit about that. They had beta readers so that my books were read by people that went, I didn't quite understand what you meant by, so we could fix something like that. And I think that helped writing, that helped my writing. I also had friends and teachers of mine that read the book and said, remember when, or this would be a better way to write that, or I didn't get this either, and that was very helpful.
So how many readers do you have who look at the book before it's actually printed?
I'd say, personally, I have 6. And then the publisher, we have 2 editors there, and it goes through 5 beta readers before it goes out to the printer.
So it's pretty thoroughly covered.
It is, but I still end up getting that one little mistake that comes through every once in a while.
There's always a mistake.
Yes.
You think with all these people looking at the book that you've covered everything, and sure enough, somebody says you didn't dot an I or
periods, right? Exactly.
It never ceases to amaze me. Now, you tried to get an agent
I
first.
Did.
And?
I had a lot of letters that were returned, and they said, we are not the right organization for you. I am not the right agent for you. Try this one. I had a couple referrals. Some of them said, we like your story, but it's not quite what we want right now. I had a lot of rejections. But I really just wanted to see what would happen. So I just kept sending out letters, and eventually one kind of connected with my publisher.
I mean, I could paint, I could paste a wall with rejection slips. And it's harder, I think, to get an agent in many respects than it is to get published.
Yes, definitely. Even now, there are so many people that are publishing indie, and they're doing a great job.
Well, you know what the secret is? An agent, a successful agent, will have a lot of people working for them.
Yes.
It's the same in movies. They get a script. If they're negative about it, that's fine. If they're positive about it and it falls on its face, they can lose their job.
Yeah.
So more often than not, they will turn you down than they will accept you.
They're being very careful. They are.
Yeah.
It was an interesting process. I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore. So, yeah, a lot of letters, lots of information too. Some of them were face to face, and I liked that as well. They were able to say, this is what you could do that might make it better, or this might make it more marketable, or that was helpful too.
So tell us about Mary's background.
I was a teacher for 11 years. I was a math teacher. Then I had my kids and I stayed home. I was very fortunate. I always wrote. I wrote when I was in high school. I wrote when I was in college. I got my first rejection letter while I was in college. I continued to write when the kids were little. And then when they all went off into their own careers, then I decided I was going to try and write a book and finish. And that's when I came up with Maverick and Katie. Katie, as a character, went to school to be a mathematical cryptanalysis. And so she went to be the kind of person that would do cybersecurity. Life did not work out the way she wanted, and she ended up looking for another job. And at that time, the only job that she could find right now, today, was being a high school math teacher. So she is a high school math teacher, and Maverick ends up being her dog.
There's a ring of familiarity with that.
A little, just a teeny tiny bit. The only thing that I can say about that is that some of my students will go, I remember when that happened. But I loved teaching. I loved math. And for me, this was one of the ways I could put those together. I do think until Hidden Figures came out, the movie, there are a lot of women that did a lot of good in the sciences, and they did not get credit for it. So each one of my books has a mention of a female cryptographer from World War II, because that was part of what Katie's job was going to be. So I also use a lot of codes and decryption and encryption in each of the books as well.
Well, women were not expected to do what they did, and they were so important in particularly World War II, as you mentioned, not only decoding material, but even in England, in the Enigma code, women were really, really instrumental in unraveling the German codes and helping us win World War II.
Yep.
And as you said, there have been several movies which is just coming out now, of women. Not only that, the part that they played, women who ferried planes from here to England, and things like that, and in great danger. So.
But we didn't hear about that. It wasn't quite as miraculous, or but it was so important. It really was. So that's part of what I wanted to have in each of the books as well.
So it's one of the comments on your books that I have read said they're books of intrigue, humor, and small-town Minnesota charm.
I lived in Wilmer, Minnesota, and I think a lot of what I have done in the books are things that could have happened there. As a matter of fact, my fictional town is called Columbia in Monongalia County. In 1870, Columbia in Monongalia County existed. It's on the maps. But in 1872, it's no longer there. It kind of was merged with Kandiyohi County, and the city is gone. But in Spicer, Minnesota, there is a rock in the park that says, if it could have stayed, Columbia would have been right here. So I use that as my my geography for
so that's your locale for your. And how do these accidents or murders or events happen in your books?
All different ways. We've got poisons, we have gunshots, we have all different ways. They just, I don't know. And for a small town, there are way too many murders. Got to kind of move them around a little bit.
I note that there's a very careful use of language in your books. There's, other writers, even female writers, who will use much spicier language than you do. Is that a very conscious thing?
Yes, it is. I think part of that is also the cozy mystery trope. It's not part of being a cozy mystery writer. And that is why my publisher said, we really do need to kind of cut out those the 15,000 words, because you're not writing it as a mystery. You are writing it as a cozy mystery. So that made it easy for me. And that was something that I did consciously. And I think that's more of the way that I prefer to talk anyway.
So the F word that we
No.
find in many books, we don't find.
No.
And now you've won a lot of awards in a very short period of time.
I kind of got on like the top 5 list, but not the winning award. My series did win the Impact Award last year, and it was the books in a series. That was the award that it won. But actually, as each book has been out there, they were semifinalists for a number of awards, so I was very lucky there too. I was a top pick at the Killer Nashville last year, which was kind of fun too, but not the winner, but on the top 5.
Now, we have Maverick, the dog. It's interesting because I have written Katie, the Springer, into my books, but at least the second and third. But you also have a fascination with horses. Tell us about that.
The 9th book is kind of dedicated to my mother-in-law, who loved the Kentucky Derby. So the horses became a very important part of that book. Each of the books in the series is 1 month in the life of Katie as a school teacher. So we've got September and October and November. And so that's what happens during that month of the year.
What happens after we reach December?
Well, December?
Yeah.
Well, then we have January, which was fishing, ice fishing in Minnesota, of course, you know. And then February was Valentine's Day. So that's Diamonds, Diesel, and Doom. That was jewelry. And then March is spring break. We just keep going. And then in May, we have the Kentucky Derby party that happens, plus Mother's Day. So they kind of take the things that are happening in those months are happening in my books as well.
And horses came into play where?
In Juleps, Jockeys, and Justice, which is about the Kentucky Derby party. They are local horses. They aren't at the Kentucky Derby. They aren't even at Canterbury Downs. But I did go look at those places at Canterbury Downs just to check out what the track would look like, and kind of use that as part of what I have for my story. So,
Are there horses in the new one that's on its way to the publisher?
I'm sorry?
Are there horses in the new one that's on its way to the publisher?
No, the new one has the students going to Atlanta for a mock trial competition, and Katie and her friend Jane are also taking them down there as the chaperones, as the advisors. So it's that trip. They did not have horses there. They do, however, get Maverick down there.
They do.
They do.
They do. Interestingly enough, have you visited most of the locales where your books are, other than upstate in the Wilmer area?
I have. I kind of want to do as much true as I can because I'm writing fiction, but I want what I can make true be as true as I can. I have.
Because I do the same thing, and interestingly enough, it brings you to some really interesting places. But for instance, an Indian reservation, Native
Yes.
American reservation in North Dakota, where we spent a few days, and I think it adds a realism to what you were writing that you can't. Google is wonderful. You can get just about anything from Google, but I find that being there and experiencing the people and the places is a whole different ball game.
So did you go to Nebraska too for your last one?
My last one was in Kansas.
Kansas.
Yeah.
Kansas, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Did you go to Kansas then?
No, I created Kansas.
Okay. I like that.
But the previous ones were, number one was so familiar to me, courtrooms and civil procedure, criminal procedure, the Supreme Court, where I argued a couple cases, things like that. And I have a little law in each of my books, but the first one was much more law-oriented than the next two. And the next one is going to be a really sharp turn if we get it done.
It's going to be done. It's going to be done.
Well, that depends on my body. If my body holds up.
Okay, it's going to be done. It'll be good.
Family influence?
I have a lot of support. I have a lot of people in my family that'll say, they're reading and they're sending it to their friends. I have friends that do the same thing, which I'm very fortunate to have. Yeah, it's good. A lot of support.
You're a member of Sisters in Crime?
Yes, I'm a member of Sisters in Crime, and those people are incredible. They do incredible things. They are wonderful. They are smart. When you have a question, if they don't know the answer, they make it up, and they are just great.
And the Sisters in Crime, of course, is a national organization, but here in Minnesota, we have a very active local chapter, and they meet once a month. You've also now gotten active with the Minnesota Mystery Writers.
Yes.
And they meet once a month.
Yes.
Have you been featured yet as a speaker?
I am not, but I am scheduled for November with Julie Holmes, which is going to be really fun.
Julie has been one of our guests here.
Yes.
As a matter of fact. Yeah.
So it's going to be great.
So, an average day for you. Let's run through it.
I get up and feed the dog, and then the dog and I go in my office, and he sits around while I write about him and everybody else, probably until lunchtime, and then I go back and review what I wrote and edit and make plans for the next day, so I know what I want to write the next day.
Editing is so important.
It is. And I still make all kinds of mistakes thinking, where did that come from? How did I miss that?
My technique is to read today what I wrote yesterday, and sometimes you just end up throwing it away, which is very hard for me because I believe that my words are written in stone, and to throw them away is very painful. But sometimes you have to,
yes,
based on where you're going with the story.
Yes, especially when you find out that the person that you thought committed the crime didn't.
Well, that's intrigue that really adds to it. But
so do you write with an outline?
I write with bullet points.
Okay.
I don't have an outline per se, but it changes radically as you're going along.
It does.
And as this next one, which is mostly still in my mind, will be some shocking changes.
Okay.
But we'll see if that works.
That's a good thing.
What about outlines with you?
I have a very scant outline as well. I have probably bullet points would be a good way to describe it. I know beginning and end. I know the important things that I want to have in the book and where they should probably be. But there's always that surprise.
I don't always know the end. I'm sometimes surprised
There you go.
how it ends up. I know the beginning. I know the bulk of the story, but not necessarily the end. But you
I do.
Going in.
I do. Yes, it's always worked out. In fact, the one time it didn't work out, I actually got rid of that whole section and wrote something new and then saved that for the next book. So it was good.
What would your advice be to somebody who wants to write? Let's call them a young writer, which doesn't mean that they are necessarily young in years. But what would your advice be?
I think you have to follow your passion. Write about something that you really love or are have a strong feeling about, because there's going to be a lot more depth there. There are going to be more senses involved. You are going to feel them, you are going to smell them, you're going to see, and it makes the story much more interesting if you're doing fiction. If you're doing nonfiction, I don't know how people do that, because I still love what they write, and I think, how do you make this be so compelling, or this true story be something that I still want to read? So for
Research.
me, yes.
Research.
Yes.
Which is important even for your novels.
Yes. Yes. I took a jewelry class so that I could write about the torch.
So what do you see down the road for your novels?
I have a contract for another 6 books, so I will make sure that I have, it'll probably be around 18, and then we get to talk about it again and see if they want to continue or if I want to continue. And I may have another series that also comes up, so I'm excited about that as well.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we find writers like David Housewright, who has 3 different, characters series. Writers like Brian Freeman, who can put out 4 books a year. I have no idea how he does it, including the Ludlum books. Yeah,
Exactly.
And he can switch from that to an entirely different focus. That's beyond me.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
How important is editing?
I think it makes or breaks a story, because there are things that people will watch or read or look at and go, oh. So if you have somebody else that can catch it or help you catch it, because when I read it, there are a lot of things in my head that I think are on paper, and they never actually make the paper. They're still up in my head. And that's what I've come to realize that the editing helps with. It's like, you didn't exactly hook these all together, and I thought I did because they were connected in my mind. So I think the editing is very important.
And Katie and Maverick. Does Maverick have a big role, such as in there are books, excuse me, about cadaver dogs and things like that, who really have a very big role?
Yep. He is not a cadaver dog. He is in training for search and rescue because he has that capability. He does that kind of on his own. So that is what
he
Katie,
sniffs things out.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. So that's one of the things that he's working on with one of the trainers there. They are working he's a probationary search and rescue dog. And hopefully that will pan out for him. But if it doesn't, he still helps Katie do that.
One of the things we say to people is, turn off your phone before an interview.
I'd be calling you.
And that's the second time that's happened to me recently. In any event, good luck.
Thank you.
And I'll be interested to see what your next series is about after this 6 books. We've been talking with Mary Seifert, who is a prolific, award-winning Minnesota author.
Thank you.
We are fortunate in this state to have so many good writers. And I'm reading another one now that I've never read before, but in so many genres.
Yes.
That it is a pleasure. And it has been a pleasure to have you also.
Thank you for having me.
Certainly we will look forward to your books and to your next books. And good luck.
And to yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.